What is going on, guys? Welcome to Wildcat Cave. Today I'm going to be going through every game in the SEC from this past weekend and giving you guys a rough overview of what happened and what that means going forward for these teams. Stay tuned for a breakdown of the UK-Georgia game, what happened there in the Battle of the Undefeateds down in Athens, as well as what transpired at the end of the Tennessee and Ole Miss game. If you're not already, make sure you hit the subscribe button for all future SEC and Kentucky videos. Hit the notification bell. That way you know when all of the content comes out. I have a lot coming up this week since it is UK football's bye week. So I'll have this SEC video, some football videos, maybe even a basketball video thrown in there this week since we're not going to have as much to talk about for the football team. As always, make sure you like this video if you enjoy it and comment down below your favorite game from this past week in the SEC. Alright, before we get into this video, I have to of course stop and say congratulations to Mr. Justin Rice. You guys know that on my breakdown videos every week, I ask you guys to comment your prediction for the Kentucky game, and Justin Rice predicted 23-13 with the Georgia win. The final score, of course, ended up being 30-13, so he was really close, just a field goal off. Congratulations, Justin. I will be doing another contest similar to this later in the week, so stay tuned. Make sure you watch the video so you know when that contest is, and you get a chance to win again along with everybody else. But speaking of the Kentucky-Georgia game, we're going to start with it since it's probably what I'm going to say the most about. I said, the Battle of the Undefeateds down in Athens. Kentucky ends up dropping the game and loses 30-13 to the number one team in the country in Georgia. Watching the game, Georgia was in control the whole time, and it was pretty evident, but it never really got the feeling like it has in years past that Kentucky was just outclassed by Georgia. Now, I'm not saying that Georgia doesn't have the better players, because they do, but it felt like Kentucky at least deserved to be there this time. They were able to do a lot of good things in the game, Kentucky was. They controlled the time of possession by quite a bit. They had 38 minutes to Georgia's 22. Levis had a great game. He threw 32 for 42 with 192 yards and 2 touchdowns and no turnovers, which is big against this Georgia defense, as you know. And, Georgia did a lot of good things as well. They were able to hold a predominantly dominant rushing team in Kentucky to only 51 yards at about 2 yards per attempt. Chris Rodriguez, the leading rusher in the SEC, ran the ball 7 times for 7 yards. So they were really able to keep Kentucky's running in check. They did give up a little through the air to Will Levis, but overall, Georgia, of course, did a really, really good job controlling the game. The thing that impressed me for Georgia is Stetson Bennett and their tight ends. I didn't know how good Georgia's tight ends were. I hadn't heard anything about them until this game, but they are really, really good, possibly the best tight ends in the country, and that was just something I personally was unaware of. And again, Stetson Bennett, I've been a little critical of him and JT Daniels this year, but he had a really good game and really impressed me. I believe, obviously they're going to be championship level contenders anyway, but Stetson Bennett specifically convinced me that he can be the guy for Georgia going forward and be that national championship level type quarterback for the Bulldogs. Now, what does that mean for these teams? For me, it means that these teams are exactly where I thought they would be before the game. For Georgia, you are that elite national contender level. I said multiple times on multiple videos and comments that this would be the best team Georgia plays until the SEC championship, and I still believe that is true. Georgia stepped up and took the challenge head on, and they showed why they are the best team in the SEC and in the country. As for Kentucky, you did something against Georgia that no one else has done. You had success moving the ball at times, and you were able to score 2 touchdowns against a team that had only led up 2 touchdowns all season. So if you're Kentucky, I think there's a lot of positives coming out of this game. Georgia just has better personnel, better recruiting, and they're the better overall team right now. And that's not something Kentucky should hang their head about. You still have a chance to go 11-1 this season, make a New Year's Six bowl, be in the talks for the playoffs if you get some help from other teams, and have that historic season you wanted to have. As a Kentucky fan, I haven't seen any Kentucky fans be upset about this game. Honestly, it is all positive here, even with a loss. You are playing a team that is just that much better than everybody else in the country. So for Kentucky, there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of here. You gave Georgia its best fight they'll see until the SEC championship, and for that, everything is trending up in Lexington and for the Cats. Moving on to the second game of the week, Alabama went down to Starkville to take on Mississippi State. Bama, looking at their numbers, they did nothing really spectacular or super impressive on the offensive side of the ball. Bryce Young did throw 20 for 28 for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. Don't get me wrong, that is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. He did play really well, but that to me is not a spectacular, oh my God, write home to your mom about type game. It is really good. They did rush for 200 yards, but it came on 41 attempts. So it was a good, dominant performance for Alabama. Not a bad win at all by any means. They controlled the entire game. They proved that the loss to A&M may or may not have been a fluke. So there's nothing to hang your head about here if you're the Tide. Mississippi State, you did throw for 300 yards, so that is good. Will Rogers looked good, had a good day except for the 3 interceptions he threw. But the tail of the tape for this game is when you throw for 300 yards and then your total yards for the game is only 299, that means you you had -1 rushing yards on the day. That is awful. You'll never be able to win games averaging -1 yard carrying the football. Mississippi State, you had to have, just to stay competitive, you had to have 100 yards rushing, and you literally did not get one. So that is why you see the score you see here. Alabama wins 49-9. Next, on to Auburn, traveling to Arkansas to take on the 17-ranked Razorbacks. Auburn comes out, of course, with a win. The story of the game was Bo Nix. I've said it in 100 videos now that Bo Nix is super inconsistent and Auburn will live and die as he does. Does it erase the stereotype of him being inconsistent, especially on the road? No, but what it does show is that he does have that potential and ability. Bo Nix threw for 292 yards on 21 completions, had 2 touchdowns and 1 interceptions. Overall, Arkansas, by the numbers, was the more balanced team. They ran the ball and threw the ball for about 230 yards. Auburn was obviously more pass-heavy, but Arkansas was the more balanced team. This might be a little closer to what I expected Arkansas to be at the beginning of the year. They came out, at the beginning in my first SEC video when I kind of previewed all the teams, I said Arkansas is probably a year or two away. I like KJ Jefferson. I like Sam Pittman. I just didn't think they were quite there yet. And then they come out early in the season and they look like world beaters. And now you're starting to see them kind of regress back to what I thought they would be. They sit at 4-3 on the season with a bad 1-3 SEC record. So going forward, if Arkansas wants to be the team that they started out as, they're going to have to start winning a lot of games, and they got to do it fast. For Auburn, they're now sitting at 5-2. You kind of control your own destiny here. You have some hard games coming up if you're Auburn, but you also have some winnable games. If you can go 8-4 after what looked to be a tough start, that's probably a win for the Tigers. Over to Missouri and A&M. A&M coming off the win at Bama, of course, or win against Bama. Taking on the Missouri team that might be the biggest disappointment in the SEC this year after such a strong SEC schedule last year and a good showing. They projected Missouri to be a lot tougher than what they are. Missouri sitting at 3-4 now after this loss, 0 SEC wins. It was a bad day to be a quarterback out in Missouri. Calzada for A&M completed only about 50% of his passes for 148 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Bazelak for Missouri, who is typically a really good quarterback. He makes a lot of good decisions and throws the ball pretty well for the Tigers most of the time. Threw 29 for 43, 230 yards, but no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The difference on the game was Isaiah Spiller for A&M. Ran for 168 yards on 20 carries. Really carried the A&M offense when the quarterback was struggling. And to me, it just seemed like Mizzou never got going on offense at all. Was never able to establish a pattern or a rhythm against the A&M defense. So going into the game, this is probably about the score I would have expected out of these two teams. So they kind of hit expectations here. If either quarterback has a bigger day, if Calzada for A&M decided to have a better day, that they really could have ran up the score in Missouri. And same for Bazelak. If he doesn't throw the 2 interceptions and has a couple touchdowns, maybe this game is closer. But right now, Missouri is having an awful, disappointing season, and the Tigers are going to have to turn it around if Drinkowitz and them want to even make a bowl game at this point. Heading down south to Baton Rouge, Florida travels to take on the LSU Tigers. The Florida quarterbacks combined for 23 out of 40 passes, 350 yards through the air, and 4 touchdowns. Now, when you couple that with Florida running the ball for 138 yards, you would think that Florida had a really good game and should have won the game. What may have made the difference was the 4 interceptions Richardson and Jones threw for the Gators. Obviously, Florida should have won just strictly based on their offense minus the interceptions, but what really let them down is their defense. They really did a good job keeping Max Johnson in check for LSU. He only threw for 133 yards. Now, granted, he had 3 touchdowns on 14 completions. That's not great for if you're a Gator fan. That is uber efficient if you're a Tiger fan. So while Max Johnson didn't throw for a ton of yards, he was efficient somewhat on the passes he threw. But the big stat and where Florida's defense really let them down is in the run game. LSU is a team that averages only about 80 yards per game rushing, and they ran for 321. Let me repeat that for you guys. 321 yards on the ground for the LSU Tigers. This is a game that looked more like an old LSU team than this year's LSU team. A very run-heavy, pound the ball, and very efficient LSU team yesterday. So LSU comes out with the 49-42 win. A big win for Orgeron if he wants to keep his job. And now maybe people are looking at Dan Mullins like they're looking at Ed Orgeron. Both of these coaches, if the trend continues for these teams, could be on the hot seat come the end of the season. Heading over to Columbia, the Vanderbilt Commodores take on your South Carolina Gamecocks in a battle of the worst football teams I've ever seen. South Carolina is now 4-3 on the season after squeaking out a win against the worst team in the SEC, a 2-5 now Vandy team, 21-20. Vandy ran the ball for 106 yards and threw the ball for 206. That is about all you can ask for out of this Vandy team. They did a good job limiting South Carolina's run game, which is typically their strength, to 117 yards. The downfall came in the air for Vanderbilt when they gave up 317 yards passing to Luke Doty in that offense. Vandy even did a lot of good things like win the turnover battle. Vanderbilt won the turnover battle with 2 turnovers of their own, but they forced 4 from South Carolina. If that is any other team in the SEC, they blow South Carolina out by at least 2 to 3 touchdowns. Any other team, Missouri included, you cannot turn the ball over 4 times in the SEC and win a game, unless you're playing Vandy. And what this says to me by squeaking out this win at home to the worst team in the conference, Beamer and Doty might not be the saviors you guys thought. When Kentucky played you guys, all I heard was how Shane Beamer is turning this program around and how Luke Doty is going to eat up Kentucky's defense. Now we're seeing what those guys really are. Beamer, congratulations. You got your first SEC win, but it might be your only one this season, so enjoy it. Doty, you threw for 317, but you didn't have a great game. You never got your run game established, so you were forced to throw the ball to win the game. So that throws some numbers off for me. Overall, South Carolina, if you want to feel good about the win, do it. I mean, you did get it, but you beat the bad Vandy team by 1 point at home. I don't know what to tell you. That's a bad day for you guys, in my opinion. And the final game in the SEC this week was the Ole Miss Rebels traveling to Knoxville to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, I'm going to spend a very little amount of time talking about the game, and I'll spend a lot of time talking about what happened at the end. Watching the game, it felt like Ole Miss was in control the entire time. The score says otherwise, with it being only a 5-point game, but to me, it really felt like they just controlled everything. It never really felt like Tennessee had a shot. It really felt like it was a game of the quarterbacks. Matt Corral proved why he is probably the best quarterback in the SEC. Not only did he throw for 231 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he ran for 195 yards as well. If you have a quarterback that can run and throw for 200 yards, you have a really good chance, especially when he has talent around him and Lane Kiffin as a coach. Now, Hendon Hooker for Tennessee had a pretty good game too. Threw for 233 and 1 touchdown and ran for 108 and 1 touchdown. Not a bad day for him at all. It just seemed like there was nothing else working for him, and that was the issue. He wasn't able to establish a run game, or Tennessee wasn't able to establish a run game, and Ole Miss was in control for most of the day. So, with all that being said, that's the breakdown for the game. Now, what happened at the end of the game? Tennessee got a call that they didn't agree with, even though it was the correct call. He was short of the first down, but what ensued was possibly the most ridiculous and embarrassing thing I've ever seen on a football field. Fans began throwing anything with arm's reach onto the field at players, at coaches, at refs, at whatever they could hit, and they were throwing ridiculous things. There was a mustard bottle. I'm not sure where they got that from. Multiple golf balls were thrown. One hit Lane Kiffin. I'm not sure why you have a golf ball at a football game. But regardless, if you're a Tennessee fan, you should be absolutely embarrassed. If you were at the game and you participated in throwing stuff, you should be ashamed of yourselves. I mean, what kind of person does that over a bad call in a football game? And it wasn't even a bad call. You just thought it was. If that happened in Kentucky, I would feel so ashamed of myself not even being there and ashamed of Kentucky fans. I know I've seen a few people come out from the Tennessee side and say that they were ashamed and that it shouldn't happen or whatever, but the point is, there was enough people at Neyland Stadium to cover the sidelines in trash and debris and whatever else they could get their hands on. If you're a Tennessee fan, first off, shut up. Your team is not good enough to get away with this kind of stuff. All that stuff you talked to me about how Tennessee was so good, that is out the window. You got handled by Ole Miss. Like, Tennessee fans, the best thing they can do right now is say sorry and just be quiet. You guys got put in your place on the field and then acted like complete children off the field. You guys have no argument right now. Like, I don't want to hear how they're going to beat Kentucky. I don't want to hear how they're going to put up a fight against Alabama. I don't want to hear none of it. You guys completely showed your butts, for the lack of a better word, in the stands at the end of this game. That goes to show what some Tennessee fans are and why you guys are hated the most in the SEC. You guys always complain about getting made fun of and how you guys are back and how you're competitive and how you're going to win again. And then you turn around and go do this type of stuff. And now, instead of what should have been talked about is how Tennessee played a competitive game against Ole Miss and how you guys may have been trending in the right direction, now all of the attention is going to be how ridiculous and disappointing your fans acted this week. I hope you guys do better than this moving forward. I hope the SEC finds you an ungodly amount for this. But until you guys prove that either you can win competitive games against good teams or that you guys aren't just complete trash fans, just all you should do is just close your mouth and be quiet. So, with all of that being said, guys, that is going to be the video. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Let me know how your favorite team did this week down in the comment section. And again, let me know what you thought was the best game of the week. Stay tuned this week in Kentucky's bye week for more SEC videos, UK content. As always, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when those videos are coming out. If you like this video or you just don't like Tennessee, smash the thumbs up button for me. And as always, guys, go Cats.